Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Glad to be here with you. Thanks for listening. I think you'll enjoy this episode. We're welcoming back a songwriter, musician, who was on the show last year with a new record and has released another new record really fast. He has an interesting way of making records that he'll tell us about. The new record has an interesting concept. Our guest will tell us more. So let's meet him right now on Paradigms. Rupert Wates, welcome back to Paradigms.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
It's nice to have you here. I mean, last time you were on the show was just about a year ago. Exactly. And you'd released Lamentations, and now you've got this beautiful new record, For the People.
Yes. Thank you. So you've received that. That was released a couple of months ago, really. We recorded it just after Thanksgiving last year.
It's pretty powerful, actually.
Yeah.
I listened to it this morning. It's beautifully composed, and the musicianship and everything is really wonderful. Mm-hmm. But even more than Lamentations, it feels very like a lot of gravity.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that it's more organic myself, because I think that it definitely has a through theme that runs through it and ties it together. And I wrote it all the songs really in about 2 months, so it was very fluid. The whole process was very fluid for me and very focused, more so than the previous one, Lamentations. And there are some very gloomy stories there, but I think being folk tales, I base the songs on old English folk tales, and as they are folk tales, all the gloom is treated with a certain levity, I think, anyway, and I hope that comes across.
No, it's not like heavy, but It is about real human stories.
Yes, I think so, although some of them are fictional, but with folk tales, they all have their origins in real human experience, I think, and they're timeless for that reason. That's one of the reasons why I like them and why we keep coming back to them, because they have a timeless resonance.
The human condition.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the album. There are a lot of rather dark tales in there. But there's also a couple of humorous ones as well. So I hope it's balanced. That's what I was looking for, really, a balance.
Do you want to go through any of them? Tell us about what they mean to you, why you picked them.
Well, they're all based on old English folk tales, or very loosely. And I read an anthology of English folk tales, several anthologies, in fact, and I just picked the stories which resonated with me immediately, and I didn't really ask myself why it was that they should resonate. I just knew that they did. I then wrote the songs in a way that not so as to tell the story so much as to take the point of view of some of the characters in the story. So I didn't really try to tell the whole story. I just tried to sort of give an impression of what was taking place, and just use some of the images that I particularly liked, and hope that they would mean something to the listeners in the same way that they did to me. I did decide that I wanted to do something with the background of the First World War, which is a very important part of English popular history, I think, a very traumatic memory for England. And I wanted to do something with that background. So I researched the First World War, and I did find a couple of true stories, which I decided to use as a backdrop for a couple of songs. There's a First World War medley on the album, 2 songs. But as I say, I didn't want to tell the story so much as just to kind of give an impression and evoke an atmosphere, rather than tell the complete story as a rule.
Your timing is sure interesting.
Well, yes, I fully agree, actually. As I've been singing those songs, the gigs I've done recently, it has an added poignancy because, of course, the soldiers are back and they're fighting in another desperate war. So, yeah, unfortunately, that theme doesn't go away. I wish that it did go away, but it doesn't.
It's not that there's been peace for all this time. There hasn't. But somehow the invasion of Ukraine, I guess in part because it harkens back to World Wars I and II, and also because of the threats that have been voiced that hadn't been for some time. It does feel very much like there's this return of some feeling.
Yeah, it's deja vu. I mean, in all the worst possible ways. I mean, we've got a dictator which is what Putin is, invading a neighboring country for no other reason than to expand his own empire, which is what Hitler did. And we have the threat of nuclear war to make the whole thing worse. The origins are once again in Eastern Europe, as was the case with the First and the Second World War. It's very much like we're returning to those awful events, as if once hadn't been enough.
That's the first part of my conversation with Rupert Wates, talking about his new record, For the People. Let's listen to some of this record now, starting with the title track, For the People. Rupert Wates on Paradigms at paradigms.life.
For all the friendship you have given me, for all the kindness you have shown, the days and nights of hospitality I have known, for all the wisdom I learned at your knee, for the way you shaped my mind, the joy and laughter you have shared with me in better times. I would give you everything, but it would never be enough. And I can only sing my song for the people I love. Some are near me now and some are far away, and others never send a line. Some are strangers now, tomorrow they'll be friends of mine. And some are comfortable and they have all they need. Some are fighting for their lives. They're all doing what they have to do to survive. And some are cruel as the tiger, some are gentle as the dove. I can only sing my songs for the people will love. For the people in pain who were crowding around my door, for the people at war, I sing these songs for you and yours, for all the wounded ones I've met along the way, for many others still to come, for all who ever walked beneath the moon and the sun. While you are all around me, and heaven is so far above, I can only sing these songs for the people will love. I can only sing these songs for the people will love.
That's the title track of Rupert Wates' new record, For the People. Now let's get back to my conversation with Rupert Wates. I recently had the experience of meeting a cousin, my father's cousin actually, who is still alive, who's in his 90s, who is an Auschwitz survivor. And the timing of all this was just also uncanny. And just here we are again as humanity, again, still doing the same stuff. And what is the piece that we won't get?
I don't know. I wish I knew why it is that we have to go to war, or why people can't just live in peace, I will never understand. You know? But anyway, as a musician, I feel that my job is to create harmony, you know, and that's a very privileged role to play. And I find that I come away from a show, in particular, feeling that I've very often achieved that in a very small, limited, local way. I've brought people together, and we feel a little bit better because of it. That's the role of music, and one of the reasons why it's so important and powerful, because it can bring people together as no other art form that I know can do. It harmonizes. Music is all about harmony, but also in order to make music, you've got to be in harmony with other people. You know, the musicians have got to be playing together towards a common goal. That doesn't happen very often in life. So I think that's why one of the reasons why music is so healthy for us all right now and very important.
It's hard to harmonize with someone when you're in a fight with them.
Exactly. Well, as a musician, you just can't do it. You're not going to make music if you're fighting with your fellow musicians. You know, you have to subordinate your ego to the common goal in order to create something which is, you know, bigger than all of you and beautiful. I only wish that diplomats and politicians the world over would follow that example.
Well, they need to all sing together. Really, literally, get them together, stop talking, and make music together and see what happens.
But yes, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Instead of the only music that we have is the music of the falling bombs and the scream of the airplanes flying overhead.
The interesting thing, you know, and what you just said about people we have to find the way to harmonize with each other musically, emotionally, politically, all of that. It's that microcosm, macrocosm thing. If you can do it here, you can do it here.
Yes, I would think so. Certainly, if you feel at peace with yourself, you have no desire to go off and create war, you know, make war elsewhere. So I suspect that Mr. Putin is not a very peaceful man in his own spirit.
Yeah.
Anyway, that perhaps we shouldn't talk about the war. We'll just get upset. But
I think it's that was important, and because of the feeling of the record, that seemed important. But how have you been? So we talked about a year ago, and since then, COVID has come and gone, and all that stuff is going on, and you have a family. And how's your year been? How have things been going?
Well, thank you. Well, you know, really, in fact, last year was really not bad. I mean, and I'm always very thankful to be able to lead the life that I do. You know, we haven't been in danger of losing our home by being evicted. We've never had to stand in a food line. You know, we have groceries delivered regularly, and you know, we've never been in danger of starving. Very far from it. I've been able to play a lot of shows. I did about 80 last year. Some online, some in person. A whole mix, wide range of shows, and I felt lucky to be able to do that. And there were times, certainly, when it seemed that COVID was just a memory, and then it would come back. You know, we'd move 2 steps forward and take 1 step back, I think. And right now, it all looks a little bit more positive again, but who knows what will happen. Yes, I feel that last year was generally as good as I had any right to expect it to be. And now, certainly, I tell myself very often, we need to put things in perspective. When we're complaining about prices at the gas pump, you know, we need to remember that bombs are not falling on our heads and that we're not starving and being invaded by something. So I don't feel that I have any right at all to complain, frankly, here, you know, leading the life that I do. Things could certainly be a lot better, but I've been able to make progress and, you know, write another new CD and record it and have it well received and played on the radio, and a lot of interest has been taken in it. You know, I feel very fortunate, actually.
That's great. And 80 gigs last year, that's the most of anyone I've talked with recently. So, wow.
Some were better than others, but also I had a lot of high costs last year. My CD was quite expensive, and I did a couple of radio PR campaigns, which cost me quite a lot of money. I had a lot of avoidable costs, which were my choice. You know, I imposed them on myself. But overall, I came out ahead, you know, and I feel very fortunate in that respect. I just had to work a lot harder for it than previously. I think most musicians will tell you the same thing. The gigs are there, but you just have to go a lot further for them and pay more in gas. You know, so my expenses were generally higher. Some of them were unavoidable expenses, but many of them were expenses that I chose to incur. But yeah, but overall, we came out ahead, and I'm doing what I most care about. And I think you and I talked about this last time when we said that the most important thing is to do what you love to do. You know, and that's what I do, and I feel very fortunate in that respect. And I'm still doing what I love to do.
Rupert Wates will tell us more about his new record, For the People, in the next part of our conversation, but first, some more music. A couple more songs from this record. This one's called The North Road.
He wasn't 12 years of age in his scarlet uniform, and his face was as fresh as Incas. It's been 6 long years of soldiering and 7 years at sea since I killed the drummer boy for the gold in his purse. You will find these bones at Unaccompanied in a hollow by the road, where the wolves and the crows had picked them clean. It was the bent and withered hag who told me murder went out, and she was far from the last of the horrors I have seen. There was thunder and lightning on the wild and windy moor, and the devil walked beside me on the way. Then I saw my Redeemer at the door of the end, and I knew that he would come for me on my judgment day. He was 12 years of age in his scarlet uniform, and his face was as fresh as Incas. It's been 6 long years of soldiering and 7 years at sea since I killed the drummer boy for the gold in his purse. Oh Captain, weigh anchor, I pray, for I may not return home till your anchor be raised. If you like my silvery tail, if you like my bright fishy scales, and my hair much lighter than the breeze, let me show you how thankful I can be. Hear my loved ones calling to me from our home deep under the sea. Draw your anchor from the ocean floor, where it lies now blocking my door. Oh Captain, weigh anchor, I pray, for I may not return home till your anchor be raised. My loved ones are hungry in that lonely cave, oh, let not their watery home be their grave. My husband, oh, he is one of your kind, and his voice is sweeter than wine. I tempted him as I lay on the sand, and that same day he gave me his hand. Now each evening you may hear us sing to the moon and her sister the wind. They will send you calm and friendly seas if you'll grant this favor to me. Oh Captain, weigh anchor, I pray. I beg you, let me go on my way. Have pity on this comely maid, for I may not return home till your anchor shall be weighed.
That's Rupert Wates from his new record For the People with the song "Oh Captain." Before that we heard The North Road. And now Rupert's going to tell us about these songs and about the idea of this record.
You made this record, it's called For the People, these wonderful first-person sort of your own, putting yourself into these stories. I feel like there's an overall thing you're trying to say in this album.
Yeah, I think
what is it?
In 2020, we had the election, obviously, November 2020, and the phrase that I kept hearing was from the Gettysburg Address, government of the people, by the people, for the people, which is what America has always been all about, that idea of true democracy. We don't see it very much, but that is still the goal. And I asked myself, well, what music would be most appropriate to accompany that idea? And folk music, by definition, is music of the people, for the people, by the people. And I wanted to go back to English folk because I've been feeling for a long time that it was important for me to rediscover my own roots. So I specifically went in search of English folk tales. And it was a way of discovering more about myself, my own ancestry in a way, my buried memories of my motherland, England. And I thought that in doing so, I would create a more democratic appeal to it, if you like. I hope that was what I achieved. Music of the people, for the people. And the title song is, introduces that idea. And then I go through various folk tales in order to pursue that idea.
I'm a huge Steel Eye Span fan. So I love all the old, they take the really old songs from hundreds of years ago and electrify them. And their stories of, the common people's lives or of the gentry or of the ways they intersect or of monsters and witches and giants and all that kind of stuff. But they're ultimately all these stories about just the regular folks, really.
Yeah, I think so. And about society as it really is lived, with all its cruelties and injustices. But, I wasn't interested in just, recapturing the old folk tales in themselves. That's been done many times before. And also, I wasn't interested in doing any cover songs. I wanted all the songs to be my own. I hope that what makes them interesting on this particular record is that they have a modern slant and a modern interpretation. I think, the way I play guitar, for example, is not strictly traditional folk. And I think that gives it a little more interest and more contemporary edge to it. I would never be interested in just unearthing an old English folktale and then just delivering it in its existing form. I would want to modify it in some way, or just take a moment in that story and, as I say, create an atmosphere around that moment and play with some of the imagery. That's what I wanted to do. Anyway, in doing so, my goal was to create a sort of very demotic album. That was the word I was looking for, which would appeal to, I hope, to all people. But of course, folk music has a very limited audience, so it's very rare that you break through to a wider audience.
Well, let's talk about the musicianship on the record, because it's folk, but it's more than just, it's not like folk music 40 years ago.
No, I agree. And I've been working a lot on my guitar. I had a lot of time during the pandemic to work on my guitar playing, so I studied a lot of classical pieces, including some flamenco. And that really has really helped my guitar playing to evolve. And I think a lot of the songs on this CD are something of a showcase for my guitar playing. And that there isn't any other instrument on the album except for the violin on one song and a couple of background vocals. So the guitar is brought to the fore, as it has been on all my most recent CDs, actually. But in this CD in particular, I think that the guitar playing carries a lot more weight and draws more attention to itself. I think for good or ill. I'm particularly pleased with the guitar playing on this CD.
After I listened to it, I went back to Lamentations because I wanted to hear the difference. And it's very different. Your guitar playing is much more textured and I want to say varied in a way than it was.
Perhaps I think perhaps you're right, because I know that my playing has certainly evolved, and I feel that I'm able to do much more with my right hand than I was even a year ago. So that's inevitably reflected in the album. Also, in Lamentations, I was using some rather exotic guitar tunings, which create a certain sound, but which also limit you in some ways as to what you can really do. So I think the guitar playing on this new CD is I hope, as you say, more textured, certainly more fluid when I listen to it, more fluid and more assured, really.
Well, honestly, I thought that there were other instruments, so you've achieved
thank you.
something.
That's just me. We did it all live as well. Another thing that I like to do in the studio, it's a formula that I've created over the last 3 CDs, is to just to do it all very quickly in one afternoon and not fuss about perfection, because perfection is not really attainable, nor is it desirable, in my opinion. I tried to be as organic as possible and just accept the best performance that I gave and live with the flaws, as there inevitably are flaws in any performance. And that process was very cathartic for me, very intense and very rewarding. We didn't spend much time, fussing around and trying to correct things, which is very tedious and not very organic, in my opinion.
So interesting hearing how the process is different for people.
Right, it is different from others, I know. Yeah, some people spend weeks in a studio, but
months,
I like
years.
For a start, that's very expensive. I mean, my total budget for this CD, including manufacture, artwork, graphics, etc., was about $6,000, which really isn't that much. Most people I speak to are spending about $20,000 on a CD. Well, I don't know how they expect to recoup that, because you're only going to sell really a couple of thousand a year at the very most. If you're very lucky, I sell more like less than 1,000 a year. So I have to keep my costs down, and to do that, I have to work very, very fast. Not hastily, but quickly. I find that's much more rewarding, because you get a complete performance. That to me is more rewarding than redoing and building up and breaking down that people tend to do in studios. I'd rather have a complete performance.
I was surprised when this came in the mail, because I thought, well, he just made one.
We've had a lot of time the last couple of years.
Most people who make records don't go in and just record the whole thing in one take. Pretty interesting, and obviously it works. It sounds great. What do you think? How are you enjoying Rupert's music and what he has to say? We'd love to see your comments. Let's listen to more of Rupert Wates' album For the People. This one's called Ullswater Cove. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Steep falls the river in turbulent fountains as it marries the sea at Ullswater Cove. 100 feet down from the peak of the mountain, she gushes and rushes to meet its betrothed. My lady was fair and her tresses were golden as the sun on the bracken at midsummer dawn. Her voice was like silver, her walk was as gentle as the breeze when it ripples the warm ears of corn. She dwelled in a tower that stands on a high crag, while the river below winds its wild rocky way. And I paid my court there and wooed her and won her, and vowed we would wed in 1 year and 1 day. I left her then to go seek my fortune and earn by my sword worldly fame and success. Many the prince whose banner I followed, and many the damsel I saved from distress. Where my conquests in time reached the tower where my lady waited, yet so patient and mild. Fear that another had stolen my heart troubled her breast and saddened her smile. In sleep she would rise and walk like a phantom, gazing ahead, though her eyes had no sight. Her feet would guide her to the place on the mountain where we stood on the day when our truths we did plight. One year had passed when at last I returned home and met her there walking by midnight's pale glow. I kissed her and waking she cried out in joy and slipped from my arms to the torrents below. Steep falls the river in turbulent fountains. It gushes and it rushes to meet its betrothed. 100 feet down from the peak of the mountain, she marries the sea at Ellswater Cove. Good Captain Jack stood on the deck, looked through his glass and shook his head. It's no good, lads, he said, they're gaining on us fast. The other ship was better rigged and better manned and better armed and flew the government colours from her mizzenmast. And as the captain spoke there was a flash of light, a puff of smoke, the cannon on her bow had fired a warning blast. And we had 30,000 guineas hidden down below, more than we would ever need for all the Spanish brandy we could stow. Before the ship was overhauled, we took the bags of yellow boys and tied them fast and said a prayer and dropped them in the sea. And when the soldiers climbed aboard, we greeted them with sunny smiles and empty hands, as innocent as we could be. The captain turned the ship around, we headed home and came ashore and told the tale that none of us was sorrier than he. And there were 30,000 yellow boys sitting on the bottom of the sea. It hurt to throw them all away, but hanging would be worse, believe you me. The captain stood and hung his head and stroked his beard and looked aside and couldn't meet the banker's cold suspicious eye. We dragged the place the banker said and found the bags and brought them up, and now I need you to tell me how and why. 30,000 pebbles came to lie upon the bottom of the sea. What became of all the gold? You alone can solve the mystery. For 30,000 guineas they'll lock you up and throw away the key. The last I saw the captain, he looked prosperous as any man. He bought a handsome property with a fine view of the sea.
All right, that one's called 30,000 Guineas, A Smuggler's Tale, and before that, Ullswater Cove. Now let's get back to my conversation with Rupert Wates.
Nowadays, most of the music is downloaded. It's not sold as an object, a CD, and so you have your stuff up there for download from your website. And
I do, but I would rather people buy the physical CD. I do sell about 750 a year, I think, on a good year, almost all of which is hand-to-hand at gigs. And I will sign the CD, you know, and people want to take it home as a souvenir, but they almost never will buy the CD online. If they go online, they'll be downloading individual songs,
right,
which is fine. But one, I don't make as much money, and two, they miss out on the narrative of the CD, which is very important to me. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I'd rather they would go on that journey with me and listen to the whole CD.
It used to be that albums all had that. They were the track order was very intentional, and then the downloading thing happened, and so a lot of people just download one song, or a lot of people just release one song at a time, singles. But I also love actual art. There's actual art on the CD that's original, beautiful to woodcut. It's actually really lovely.
Thank you.
And that you include a booklet with all of your lyrics and your credits. And
there's a few little notes in the booklet, you know, as to the background of some of the songs, which I think are helpful to people. And the artwork, for me, is a very good reason for people to buy the CD. So I do invest very heavily in the artwork. And I commissioned that woodcut specifically for this CD by an English artist. I wanted it to be an English artist. And she went to work and took several months to create that. And to me, it's worth it because that gives people a reason to buy the physical CD. And they continue to do so in ever smaller numbers, but people are still buying CDs, you know, enough for me to cover my costs, which is all I really care about. And the other thing about CDs for me is that they're a great stimulus for the writer. You know, if you come up with an idea like For the People, and it gives you the seed of many, many different songs, that's very healthy. You're not just writing songs ad hoc. You have a whole canvas to fill. And that gives you an incentive to write and to look for ideas, which is very stimulating. The CD itself is an incentive for me to write songs, you know, which sounds obvious, but actually if you don't have the CD as an incentive, you're not looking for ideas in the same way. Your ears are not attuned to ideas, and your brain is not, you know, programmed to look out for interesting stories to tell. So CDs are worthwhile for me as a writer because they give me an incentive to write songs on a certain theme in a certain style at a certain moment, you know, which nothing else does. And so I will go on making CDs as long as I can cover my costs, even though you're not going to get rich through the CD, you know, or through any recording. You can't get rich anymore.
good thing that's not the goal.
No, to get rich was never my goal, but to make a living is. And, you know, I make my living on the road, you know, for people coming to see the show, and I will sell CDs at the shows, but CDs are not the means by which I make my living. They augment my living, but that's the most that they do.
For people who are engaged in creativity and creative process as an intentional part of what you do in the world, you know, you yourself can look back at all of the different things you've made and see your own process.
Yes, absolutely.
And that gives you a sense maybe of where I'm going or where I might be going, possible directions. And that's true for people, whether they're an artist making records or an accountant or anyone doing a life, you know, as we can look back at where we've been and it helps us see where we're going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would not have written, you know, this album at any other time in my life. And that applies to the other albums that I've done as well. I'm certainly the happiest with this CD. I think it's the closest to who I am as an artist and as a man. I think it's the most truthful one. It's the most truthful hat that I've worn, should we say, in all of the CDs that I've made.
Have you started writing for the next one?
I have, actually. I mean, I can't not write. You know, I mean, writing for me is life. You know, I'm kind of unhappy when I'm not writing, even though writing is very difficult. I don't really feel that I'm living as I should do if I'm not writing something. So, yeah, just the last couple of weeks, I've written quite a few songs, which they've all turned out to be love songs. So maybe the next CD will be love songs. I'm not pressurizing myself to decide. You know, I know there will be another CD sometime, but I absolutely I'm in no real hurry to produce it. But I have written 2 or 3 songs lately, which may or may not go towards the CD. We'll see.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Rupert Wates, but here's a couple more songs, starting with the song that Rupert and I talked about at the beginning of the conversation, a song about World War I.
Drink up and dry your eyes, nail a floor into the beam of the old bricklayer's arms and leave it there for all to see. Drink up and dry your eyes, and on the day when I come home, it will buy a high old time for you and me. Promise me that you'll remember me in every letter that you send to me. This war will never make an end of me, as long as you are still a friend to me. Drink up and dry your eyes, and nail a floor into the beam of the old bricklayer's arms and leave it there for all to see. Drink up and dry your eyes, and on the day when I come home, it will buy a high old time for you and me. And if I never see your eyes again, that coin will be the one you never spend. No black ringed notice in the Times for me. One silver penny will do fine for me. Drink up and dry your eyes, and nail a floor into the beam of the old bricklayer's arms and leave it there for all to see. Drink up and dry your eyes, and on the day when I come home, it will buy a high old time for you and me. We'll have a high old time, wait and see. Does the nightingale sing as sweetly as ever in the hills of blue heather where you and I lay? And the music he made filled the darkness with sound until the night found the first light of day. Is the springtime as lovely still as I remember when morning had broken and I held you near? As we stood together in the hills of blue heather, and the nightingale's song it rang in our ears. Now my days are laden with the colors of autumn. The ground we have fought on is brown as my clothes, and the night's only music is the prayer of the young men, waiting and wondering whose blood will flow, for the flowers of England shall wither. And I hear as the nightingale offers his breast to the thorn, killed by alien hands in an alien country, far from the lands where they were born. And I will see you again as lovely as ever in the hills of blue heather one morning in May. And the church bells will ring so loud they will drown all other sounds that welcome the day. Though my eyes have grown older and fires have grown colder, I will see you once more, unchanged by the years, as we stood together in the hills of blue heather, and the nightingale's song yet rang in our ears, and the nightingale's song yet rang in our ears. Take me home and take me now from a place justified in what I did. Free my hands and free my soul, and you will see me rise and fly. Take me home, only let me know if I was justified in your eyes. That I was so much younger then, and I was blinded by pride, and I flew too near the sun then. Was it justified when so many cried? Lay me down and lay me low. Take me now, my time has come. Take me home, only let me know if I was justified in what I've done. Take me home and take me now from the place where I hid. Take me home, only let me know if I was justified in what I did. Was I justified in what I did? Or was I justified in what I did?
That's Justified by Rupert Wates from his new record, For the People. And before that, World War I medley. And it's a medley of songs A Florin to the Beam and Hills of Blue Heather, the Nightingale's song. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Rupert Wates.
What's great is that you have the time and the space to follow your creativity, to be led by your own organic process and see where it leads you, instead of having to decide, I'm going here, I'm going here.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's one advantage of not having a record label. You know, I don't owe a record company anything. I do owe my publishing company money, but I mean, they don't make me feel under any pressure whatsoever to recoup that. So it's not as if I'm really answerable to anybody. I'm lucky in that respect. Yeah. You know, all these people who have big record companies behind them, they must be under an awful lot of pressure because they have to deliver, and you know, it has to sell a certain number of copies. I'm glad I'm not in that position myself.
We hear about artists who like cranked out an album and the reviews are bad, but it was in their contract, so they had to.
Oh, yeah, and they often turn it out, you know, without any regard at all to the quality, and they also feel pressure to produce a certain kind of thing. If the formula is working for them, they'll go on producing that. I can think of many examples of that kind of art, and I don't envy them at all. So no, I have a lot more creative freedom. Most of the people I know are independent like me, and we don't have any, you know, we're not answerable to anybody but ourselves. I'm glad to say.
Yeah, it seems like the aspiring to stardom is less of a thing. I mean, it's still a thing for some folks, but it seems like, at least the people I'm encountering, maybe it's because of my market, but are folks like you who are personally driven by their creativity and are not, you know, looking to, you know, play Wembley or Oakland Coliseum, but want to reach people with music that means something to them.
Well, that's the first criteria, I think. But you know what, I've often had this conversation with others actually. What I would like is for my name to be well known, because it would open a lot of doors for me. I don't want to be that. I never wanted, or I no longer want the kind of fame where you can't walk into a restaurant, you know, and be without being hassled. People who have that kind of level of fame, to me, seem quite unhappy. They don't enjoy their fame very often. They start to resent it. And so I don't envy them that, but I would like my name to open doors so I don't have to go cap in hand so often to a venue and say, will you please give me a gig? It would make life a lot easier for me if people already knew my name, you know. And I think probably most musicians would agree with that, you know. So, but I don't envy, you know, the kind of fame which would be limiting in terms of what you could do, you know, on a daily basis. That must be no fun, I would think. Really.
I totally agree. I think that would be horrible. Well, Rupert Wates, say it loud, say it clear. That's your name. We get it out there.
Thank you.
Really glad to get this new record. I'm enjoying it. I'll listen to it some more.
Thank you so much. Well, I do appreciate your interest, Baruch. You know, it's. I much enjoyed our last conversation, and I appreciate all the attention and the interest that you bring to my work and the work of other people. We all appreciate it. Thank you.
Rupert Wates, thank you so much for returning to Paradigms with your new record, For the People. Really good album. Rupert just keeps doing his thing, making music, putting it out there. If you'd like to check out his earlier records and keep track of what he's up to, because clearly he's just going to keep making records at a kind of amazing pace, his website is Rupert Wates Music, RUPERTWATES music.com. Definitely check out his site. It's pretty extensive. There's videos, there's music, there's Rupert's schedule, and lots more. So rupertwatesmusic.com. And if you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, please check out our archives, where there are over 520 episodes to choose from, at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, and in iTunes and wherever else you find your podcasts. You can also find Paradigms on YouTube now. We have a YouTube channel, Paradigms Podcast. I hope you'll visit our Patreon campaign, patreon.com/paradigms. Our Patreon supporters really appreciate you all. Thank you for your support. This record, For the People, by Rupert Wates, his thinking, his intention of exploring old stories from his own personal point of view, as if he were in the story. The stories of humanity, the stories of our past, so many of them are universal, and we can relate to them. That means we can also learn from them. Humans have been around for a while, and we do keep doing a lot of the same stuff over and over, like war and dividing ourselves up by economic class or belief system or skin color, things like that, that honestly just don't make any sense. We all live here together, and yet somehow we don't choose as a species to get along. These stories, the old stories, our history, can provide some of the clues that we need to learn to change this. Let's do that. I'm going to leave you with one more song from Rupert Wates' album For the People. It's the last song on the record, and it's called The Dance of Joy. Let's learn from that one. In the face of suffering and pain and people doing terrible things, we still have the opportunity to feel our aliveness and to share it with others. So let the word for the week be sharing. Share with another person something that matters to you, whether it's a word or a look or a feeling or a meal. It could be anything. Share. All right, Baruch signing off for Paradigms. We'll see you next time with more inspiring people. Until then, be well.
Field full of folk I saw in a waking dream, young and old and rich and poor, dancing on a green. Music sounded in the air and joy was in their eyes. I asked them why danced they there, and this was their reply: because we're here, because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Oh, dance we are for joy, because we're here. Summer's leaves will soon be gone, winter's chill is always near. We shall sing a joyful song, because we're here. tears their only gain. Some there were whose stars were crossed, some who loved in vain. All had known grief's cruel sting, and all were born to die. I asked them then why did they sing, and this was their reply: because we're here, because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Oh, dance we are for joy, because we're here. Summer's leaves will soon be gone, winter's chill is always near. We shall sing the joyful song, because we're here. Because we're here, because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Oh, dance we all for joy, because we're here. Summer's leaves will soon be gone, winter's chill is always near. We shall sing a joyful song, because we're here. We shall sing a joyful song, because we're here.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.